Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to inspire and motivate people to never give up on themselves or their dreams. We will chat with highly successful people from all walks of life and discuss what motivates and drives them to successfully attack life head on and never give up. Welcome to episode number 51 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is self-belief. Our quote of the day comes to us from Richard Parks Kordock. You must face your fears and limiting beliefs head on to develop your self-belief. I'm very excited to bring you today's episode. Our guest is a very successful young man that has faced plenty of adversity throughout his professional career. He has literally traveled the world as he has earned both an entrepreneurial MBA as well as his actual MBA. He leads by doing, and his new venture has a really unique charitable aspect to it as well. With that said, I'm honored to introduce Christos Shepherd. Christos, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Hi, it's great to be here, Chris. Great to be here indeed.
I appreciate it. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen?
I think so, yes. Not quite sure what that entails, but I think I'm ready.
All right, I think you are as well. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate our listeners to never give up on themselves. And one of the things we talk about is either a story about perseverance or a challenging time that possibly tested you where you had the opportunity to give up, but you didn't. So I was curious if you either have a story about perseverance or perhaps a challenging time where you could have given up, but you didn't.
Sure. I mean, it's a great question, Chris, and a great warm-up thing. And thanks for having me on the show, first of all. I think that everybody has a story of perseverance, don't they? I mean, everybody suffers knockbacks. And the question is whether or not you can dust yourself down, pick yourself up, and, of course, persevere, as you say. I think for me, the most challenging time I ever had, certainly professionally at least, was when I was working to start an airline in Greece. I had worked my arse off for many, many years to try and get this airline off the ground. And it had taken 2 years, I think, for us to reach the stage where we'd secured a term sheet from investors. And I think one of the reasons, to be honest, why it took 2 years to get to that stage was because of my own lack of experience in aviation. I was a history major. I was pretty young at the time. In fact, I was only 20 or 21 years old when we got that term sheet. But still, I was enthused. At the 11th hour, and when I say the 11th hour, I mean, literally, this was at 3 o'clock in the morning, my time. I got a call from that investor who'd given us the term sheet, telling us that due to losses elsewhere in their portfolio, they would no longer, they wouldn't continue, they wouldn't invest. And so all of the promises that I had made to the employees that I'd hired, even in some cases to some customers that we were looking forward to carrying on our very first few flights, were promises that I had to break. I hate breaking promises. It was just probably one of the most awful experiences of my life. I remember I was at my parents' house at the time, of all places, woke up my dad and went downstairs and smoked some cigarettes, which I don't necessarily have that much of a habit of doing, fortunately. Drank some whiskey and didn't really know what I was going to do in the morning. The following day, I woke up and watched some terrible movies. Like, I couldn't be bothered to do anything. I did give some serious consideration to just throwing in the towel and giving up. But my dad was there. My dad's a businessman, was when I was growing up, and just sort of G'd me up and told me that actually it is moments like those that define who you become as a business leader. I still had a lot more going for me than a lot of people have. I mean, I got a great education. I was surrounded by a wonderful team of people who knew everything that they were doing and who were teaching me in the process. I was healthy. I had a loving family around me. And so I had all the tools really to try again from my beginnings, to quote that line from the Rudyard Kipling poem, and never breathe a word about your loss. Here I am breathing words about my loss. But I was able to dust myself off and dust myself down. And it was with the support of the people around me that I was able to do that. Without them, I think I probably would have given up. So I got in touch with a series of investors who had previously turned us down for investment on our path to getting that term sheet that I mentioned before. Reached out to new investors, went into different parts of the world. So at that time, we were just looking to raise money in various regions in Eastern Europe and the Balkans. And we expanded our horizon to include Western Europe and North America to try and raise money there. And eventually we were able to succeed and able to get that airline off the ground. But that night, to answer your question, that specific night was a particularly low moment. It was rough.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that story, and obviously you did not give up. Would you mind giving us just a brief synopsis of what happened? And I believe you ended up selling that airline. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it was a wonderful experience. Fortunately, sold the airline before the bottom fell out of the Greek economy. But it was a wonderful experience. I just remember, the very first day our first plane took off carrying passengers on it. And it was a seaplane company, by the way, I should hasten to add. So there was sea spray involved, and the sun was kind of like hovering over the horizon. It was extraordinarily picturesque, wonderful moment. It was terrific. I ran that airline for about 2 or 3 years and eventually sold it. And went on to go and help other people to start airlines of their own in different parts of sub-Saharan Africa. So a slightly different part of the world, but I applied many of the lessons that I learned in Greece, and it was a wonderful, wonderful period of my life.
One of the things we talk about every episode is we talk about different quotes, and I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
I'm not really a great collector of quotes, but I know a good quote when I see one or when I hear one, I suppose. I actually quoted somebody something I think Thomas Edison said earlier today. He said somebody congratulated him on creating a light bulb. He said, I didn't create a light bulb. I found 900 ways not to make a light bulb. Meaning, of course, that the secret to success is just to persevere and to learn lessons from your mistakes and your failures, so that eventually you will get there.
No, I like that, and we've talked about that quote many different times, and Thomas Edison is famous for talking about that very specific idea. He didn't figure out how to do it. He figured out before how many ways not to do it, but each and every single time he quote-unquote failed, he kept going. So I think that's the big thing about perseverance and keep going as far as that story about Thomas Edison. One of the things we all know is that life is incredibly challenging, and every single day we encounter different obstacles. So I was curious, what motivates you and inspires you to keep going every single day?
Well, I think, to be honest, Chris, you just encapsulated it just a second ago. I think when it comes to failure, it sounds pat. It sounds like something that you read in those airport business books, but it's really true. Failure is a necessary precondition to success. Nobody has an uninterrupted path of success, that endures their whole lifetime, let alone for a year or a month or even a week. You always have knockbacks. You always have setbacks. Sometimes those setbacks are your own fault. Sometimes they're not. But you should always try and draw lessons from those occasions. There are moments, even this week, I as you know, Chris, I run a business, which hopefully we can talk about in a little bit, called Campfire here in New York. And even this week, we've had a series of setbacks, but it's at moments like those, and I'm surrounded by a great team, that I remind myself that there are lessons that can be drawn from those mistakes, and we can course correct, we can change our strategy, we can have top of the week meetings where we decide, well, how are we going to tactically react to some of the things that have gone awry in the week gone by, and that's how we proceed.
So speaking of Campfire, I was wondering if you could tell our listeners a minute or two about what exactly Campfire is and how it came about.
I would love to. Well, first thing to say, Chris, is, of course, if you really want to find out what Campfire is, the best thing to do is to go to get.campfire.fm. So forgive me the plug. But Campfire is a mobile app for iOS. Android is coming soon. It's an audio-based platform where you can ask your burning questions to your favorite experts, celebrities, or podcasters, even, the sorts of people you can't normally reach out to. And they'll answer your questions directly with personalized audio messages. Now, many people think of Campfire as being, well, it's a fan engagement platform, and that's quite cool. Like, I get to talk to my favorite celebrity, and they'll reply to me directly with a personalized audio message. That's true. But what's more exciting and interesting, I think, about Campfire is that if you ask really good questions, meaning questions that get other people listening in, then you end up getting paid real money. There's real dollars in your pocket. So you can imagine this as some sort of side hustle in a way if you ask really good questions. And you can donate some or all of the money that you earn to whichever charity you support. And we say at Campfire that social media does social good as a consequence.
I like that idea. If you don't mind me asking, where did the idea, the concept of Campfire originate? Because it is simple in the sense when you talk about that, but when you add the money piece as well as the charity piece, that's something that I've never heard about.
Yeah, well, I mean, I could give you the the story that I'm saving for my future autobiography, but in reality, what we did was we saw a platform that had a similar business model take off and thrive in China last year. They had a very similar sort of system of operations, a way of sharing the revenue between content instigators and content creators in a way that no other social media platform or media platform is doing at the moment, basically cutting the creators into the revenue. Hadn't been done before. And I think, my co-founder and I were just fascinated in the way in which that business worked. We decided that we would then transpose that business and bring it to a Western market. And that's exactly what Campfire is and what we're striving to do today. We just got into the App Store a couple of weeks ago. I think before Nick and I, Nick's my co-founder, before we met, I told you, like, I was in different parts of sub-Saharan Africa. He has an even more interesting story. Nick started a company in North Korea, of all places. And so I think because of our respective backgrounds, we're very interested in exploiting cultural arbitrage, meaning, as I say, finding business ideas in one part of the world, and then trying to improve them, tweak them, and transpose them to other parts. And so we'll see how it goes. I'm very excited, though, by the engagement that we're seeing on the Campfire platform and by the fun that our users are having by asking and answering questions and getting paid for it at the same time. It's thrilling to see. It's wonderful.
I was about to say, I ask and I answer questions all the time. Sometimes to myself, I ask and answer questions. never get paid, though, for that.
Well, then you should definitely download Campfire. As I say, get.campfire.fm, and it's available right now in the App Store.
Well, congratulations on that. I know that's a big success, and to be upfront with you, I'm pretty sure you haven't even touched the surface on it, so I wish you the best and continued success with that. So I wanted to ask you, if you could go back and give the 20-year-old version of yourself only one piece of advice, what would it be?
Wow. Only one? Gosh.
Only one.
Look up a woman called Abby in the phone book and find her and marry her. Spend as much time with her as you possibly can, because you are going to be wildly in love with her. And why wait to meet her until you're 27? Just meet her today. Like, here's her phone number. That's probably what I would do. But in seriousness, I think that she's my wife, by the way. She's a terrific woman and very, very patient woman too. Been with me through all of my entrepreneurial adventures and ups and downs. And I couldn't do any of the work that I do without her support and her patience. So, now, where was I? What if I can choose a second thing, what would I tell my 20-year-old self? I think the most important thing is to surround yourself with good people. Always, always, always. It's again something that you read in these airport business books. But if you do surround yourself with good people, you tend to find that you not only do you learn a lot from them, but you also find that opportunities start presenting themselves to you, both professionally but also in your personal life too. So yeah, just surround yourself with the right people, I would say to myself.
That's a great piece of advice, and I would definitely have given myself that type of advice when I was 20 as well. So I wanted to ask you, here's a different question. If you could have dinner with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Oh, God. Wow. These questions. You should really be asking them to me on Campfire, where we could be raising money for the charities we both support. But sure, I'll give you some freebies. Who would I like to have dinner with, dead or alive? It's just too hard to choose. To be honest, the first person who came into my head was Michael Jackson. I'm a huge fan of Michael Jackson, and I watched a video of his on YouTube this morning when I was walking on the treadmill. So he's the first person that came to my mind. I would love to learn a little bit about how he felt, the way he was treated by the media and sort of the opprobrium that surrounded him, particularly towards the end of his career. I think he was one of the greatest entertainers, certainly of my lifetime, probably of the 20th century. And I'd love to hear things, I guess, from his perspective. But I also feel like, I don't know if maybe I would choose somebody who's even more inaccessible, like somebody who, like Cleopatra or something. I don't know, somebody very old. I really don't know. It's a great question. I'm not sure.
No, I appreciate it. See, I should be on Campfire as well.
Yes, you should, because I would be asking you these questions too, by the way.
And I would have chosen a different Michael. My Michael would have been Michael Jordan. That's just because I'm a big Michael Jordan fan. But we're in our 50s as far as podcast episodes, and you are the first person that selected Michael Jackson, so kudos to you on that.
Okay. What have other people been saying? Because I've only heard the last couple of episodes.
The actual number one person that's been mentioned the most is Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, wow. Okay, interesting. Yeah, I could see that.
And I wonder, some things are geared towards different things, obviously, in life. But I'm curious if because of the show is about not quitting and not giving up and perseverance. And to me personally, Abraham Lincoln defines that and then some because of all the reasons and the ways he failed before he became president. And then Steve Jobs is probably one of the ones up there.
Yeah.
Who else is up there? Jesus has been mentioned many, many, many times. Okay. And then Elon Musk is up there as well. And Jeff Bezos has been mentioned, I think, 2 or 3 times. So it's interesting to get people's perspectives. So here's a different question for you. One of the things, obviously, we talk about is never quitting and never giving up. I was curious if there was a time where a specific person or company told you no in your life, personal or business, and that no actually helped motivate you to and inspired you to do something different or to keep going and ultimately succeed.
Oh God, absolutely. I am so obstinate. I am so stubborn. Again, I praise my wife for putting up with me for that. I am so stubborn and so obstinate that when somebody tells me I cannot do something, it makes me more determined to do it. I remember this. I'm sure many of your listeners will probably also remember this. Like even being a child, sitting in front of the television at home and being told to go to bed by my mother. And even though I was tired and I did in fact want to sleep, the mere fact that my mother had told me to go to bed meant that I would insist on staying awake. Like that's how obnoxiously obstinate I am. And I'm still like that today. I have received no's. It's easy to look back in retrospect and say, hey, Christos, you raised money for an airline and you raised money for Campfire and this kind of thing. I have received far more no's than I've ever received yeses. And it was the no's actually that spurred me on to continue until I eventually found somebody who said yes. I mean, for example, I was just speaking to somebody this morning again about the fundraising experience here at Campfire. We raised a round last November, which was great, raised our seed round to expand and to hire a team and for growth and things like that. We raised the money, but there were also, 20 times. It was for every one yes we got, there were probably 20 people who VCs or funders or whatever who said no, and they all said no. I have to be honest with you, generally in the most patronizing of ways as well. They'd always sort of lean over the table 30 minutes after meeting you for the very first time and lecture you about your business as if they knew more than you did, which is bizarre. And I just disliked it. It sort of made my skin crawl. But every single time I heard somebody say no, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to go and raise this money. And of course, now that we raise the money, other people still say no. People say, well, okay, you raised the money, but the platform's never going to work, or you're never going to get that partnership. You're never going to get that new hire that you need. You're never going to get that collaboration that you're looking for. And every single time, I'm motivated to try and prove those people wrong, and to do it partly, to be honest, to spite them just as much as to kind of like to please myself, I guess.
No, I think that's a very good point you bring up, and it reminds me of the Japanese proverb, which is fall down 7 times, get up 8. And I think one of the things we talk about on the show is that the most successful people in all walks of life have failed more times than others. And the reason that they're successful is they take those no's, or they take those business failures or relationships that don't work out, and they turn them into their next success. So I think every investor that didn't invest with you, or for example, that gentleman who tried to tell you how to run your own business, it motivated you to where you are today. So I commend you for keeping on going and ultimately proving them wrong. And one of the things I think is interesting is we talk about a quote is the best revenge is success. And I think a lot of times people want to get revenge by going back and rubbing it in someone's face, or going back to that, for example, that investor that didn't invest in your company. And we always talk about is the best revenge is massive success. And ultimately, all those people that told you no or laughed at your idea, they'll realize in some way, shape, or form when they see or hear about your business that maybe they were wrong, and maybe next time when they have an opportunity, they won't tell somebody no or try to tell them how to run their business.
Exactly. And fingers crossed that will happen with us.
Yes, very fingers crossed. So where do you want to be 5 years from now?
I really hope that we're in a place, I would like Campfire genuinely to have changed the world in 5 years' time. And I don't only mean change the world in the sense of, because I've said there are spin-off benefits to charity. We are a platform that inherently, from the get-go, raises money for the good causes that our users support, which I think is very important. And I do want that to continue to be, it will continue to be a core part of what Campfire is all about. But what I hope more than that is that Campfire becomes a platform whereby people right the way across the world are able to share and engage the knowledge, opinions, and perspectives of others. It's very, very easy to forget how difficult, I think it's easy to forget how difficult it is for most people in the world, in fact, probably most people in the United States, let alone most people in the world, to access the expertise that they really crave and want and need. If you are growing up in, a slum in Nairobi, and I can't claim to have intimate experience of Nairobi slums, but, I've been to them, I've stayed in some, the odds of you speaking to, for example, a university admissions professor from an Ivy League school is zero. The chances of you speaking to somebody who in turn has ever spoken to an Ivy League admissions professor is not far above zero. So there are huge swathes of the world where, despite the internet, despite social media and all of these other tools we have, it's impossible to get direct access to expertise or knowledge, or sometimes even information, particularly when it comes to things like, health information, legal information, and things like that. So I'm really hoping that in 5 years' time, Campfire is in a place where we have touched the lives of hundreds of millions of people in different parts of the world, not just here in America, but as I say, in parts of the world that very often get overlooked too.
No, I think that's a very good goal, and I think based on your structure and how you're going, it's something that it will have a positive impact. So before we let you go, I wanted to ask if you have any parting words for our listeners.
Just don't let anybody ever tell you that you are not good enough. And you really, it's so important. So, there's a fine line, I think, for entrepreneurs in particular, between self-belief and arrogance. Very often, your role as an entrepreneur is to dismiss the opinions, the negative opinions of other people to such an extent that you start to have an artificially inflated vision or view of yourself. In other words, when other people, you have to have a thick skin and ignore the bad things that other people are saying about you. In so doing, as I say, you can often come across as being arrogant or aloof, and you have to be aware of that. You have to be aware of the fact that other people may view you in that way and view you negatively as a consequence. But it's nevertheless extraordinarily important to maintain that tough-skinned exterior, to learn the lessons of your mistakes, and to turn other people's words or deeds or actions against them. Use them as ammunition for yourself so that you can ultimately go and prove them wrong.
And last question, I promise it's the easiest one. What's the best way What's the best way for our listeners to either follow you or connect with you?
Use Campfire, obviously. If you go to, I said it before, get.campfire.fm from any iPhone, and Android is coming soon, by the way, but get.campfire.fm. If you go there, you can download the app, Once you download the app, you can install it. It takes 2 minutes to set up a profile and install it, etc. You can search me on Campfire, Christos Shepherd. I'm right there. You can ask me questions anytime. I will answer you directly with an actual audio message. I'm happy to dispense advice, and also just, explore other members while you're there. Explore other members of the Campfire team. We have some fascinating people. As I said, my co-founder Nick Young started a company in North Korea. He has some amazing stories to tell about that. Our chief engineer was a Michelin-starred chef and gave it all up in order to retrain himself as a mobile applications developer, and a pretty good one at that. So we have some amazing people on our team. And if any of your listeners want to connect with us, get.campfire.fm, that's the place to go.
Listen, Christos, I cannot thank you enough, not only for your time as well as your sharing your stories with us, and we will put all the information about Campfire in our show notes. So thank you very much for being a guest on our show today.
Thanks so much, Chris. It was wonderful to be here. Wonderful.
To sum up today's episode and our theme of the day, self-belief, Christos shared some great stuff with us. He was adamant for our listeners to be aware of the difference between self-belief and arrogance. While Christos was creating and in the process of launching his own airline, at the 11th hour, his funding backed out. When faced with what seemed like an insurmountable obstacle and the only option to really throw in the towel, Christos didn't. Instead, he reached back out to those initial investors that told him no, and he expanded his reach to different countries and parts of the world. When faced with adversity, Christos took action. In his parting words, Christos shared his perspective with us that nobody succeeds all the time. He also told us how all of those no's have helped motivate him to keep going. He also touched on the importance of surrounding yourself with good people and never letting anybody tell you that you're not good enough. So today's question for our listeners is this: who is in your corner, and who do you surround yourself with? And whose corner are you in, and who do you support? Today's call to action is very simple. Make sure you surround yourself with good people and spend time with those that truly support, motivate, and inspire you to be the best version of yourself. So go for it, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.